Hey, welcome to the Center with Jesus podcast. I'm your host, Tina Lancy, and we are here with Dr. Donna. Go ahead, Donna. Say the last name?
It's Jagielski.
Okay. It's okay though. We call her Dr. Donna or Dr. J, and you can too. She's very understanding about that. So, Dr. Donna, we're going to talk about some different things today. Let's start with your background. How did you come to yoga? How did you end up working with marginalized youth? Give us kind of how you got to here.
Right. Okay. Well, actually, my yoga practice goes back a long way. I actually majored in dance in college, and
Oh,
I
wow.
danced professionally for a few years. I loved it. It was my passion in high school and everything. I just come from this real creative kind of arts background. And it was a real natural kind of, I don't want to say a supplement, but yoga, Pilates, those are kind of the natural extensions that a dancer, does.
Mm-hmm.
So when I left the profession, because it's very short lived, just like,
Yeah.
early 20s kind of thing and everything like that, yoga was just already part of my life. I
Okay.
actually then transitioned into dance education. I was teaching dance. And that was my segue into the world of education. But yoga was just always so beneficial to me because I've just always been a very type A personality, overachiever, perfectionist, all of these types of things. And this is why, yoga is so important to me for wellness and mental health and everything like that. That was my biggest avenue. That was the time that I really found peace where I could just and like turn off all of the chatter in my head and everything like that. It was really where I found a lot of just overall acceptance, non-judgment, because of course, coming from the world of dance, there's a lot of judgment,
I'm
behind
sure.
everything, all of this stuff. And just even throughout education, there's a lot of, classifications of individuals and students. So it was really the place where I found that peace.
Okay.
And then as far as really where I found my area in teaching, it was really kind of strange because as I just, achieved more and more in, the world of education, my first master's degree, my second master's degree, and then I went into my doctorate program again because, I'm just this type A overachiever, all of this stuff. Um, Obviously, a doctoral program is super, super grueling and everything. And I had made a promise to myself that I had this kind of quote unquote bucket list
Mm-hmm.
that included things that had nothing to do with education, with research, with academia, and everything. Like all these things that I wanted to do to kind of get back my freedom from doing this doctoral program, even though it was my choice and I wanted to do it. And I
Right.
mean, there were certain things on it like I wanted to learn how to hula dance because I never, hula danced in my
Yeah.
dance program. It was contemporary, everything like that. Like is a couple of the things on the bucket list, that I still haven't been able to do yet. Like I really want to learn how to make pizza, like to twirl the pizza dough. Just stuff like this. And one of which was to fully become certified in yoga and to go out and teach yoga because yoga had just been this part of my life
Yeah.
throughout my whole life. And I said, it has done so much good for me that I want to pay this forward. So, fast forward then, I mean, I graduated with my doctorate in 2016. And then
Mhm.
still I took a little bit of time and then boom, around just before the pandemic happened, around 2018 was when I obtained my first certification in yoga and was an initial 100-hour. I had not known until shortly before this time that Christian yoga existed. And I was like, when I learned this, I was like, oh, wow, this is like everything, everything. I can, yoga, my Christian faith, and everything. So I went into
Right.
this program that was Yahweh Yoga. So I got
Oh,
certified as
yeah.
a yoga teacher, right? Yeah. In
Yes.
2018, my 100-hour. And I just fell in love with everything, with teaching yoga as a result. the church that I was really involved with at the time, they had a yoga ministry, and I was taking yoga classes there at the time, and then I got certified, and they just like, brought me on board to teach and everything, and I loved it.
Awesome.
The only thing about it though, Tina, was it just something didn't feel quite right for me. I mean, I
Mhm.
love that, I mean, I was teaching Christian yoga with the ministry and all this stuff. But then around the time of the pandemic, I said, I need to take it to the next step. Oh, again, the overachiever, and all this stuff. So I said, well, I've got to go into a real standard 200-hour program.
Okay.
Plus, I've loved kids. I've been teaching high school, all this stuff. And I'm like, I want to teach yoga to the youth. So I took a dive into my 200-hour program, and at the same time, the 95-hour children's yoga, which had an emphasis on trauma informed practice.
And what
This
school did you do
program,
that through?
um, yes, my children's yoga certification was through Yoga Ed, which was great because their whole like approach was even to work with educators to integrate yoga and mindfulness into the classroom,
Okay.
everything like that. And then my standard 200-hour, which then after that I went back and earned my 300-hour for my combined 500, was with Yoga Farm Ithaca, which has just got a great, yoga philosophy and everything. So as I, just went through these programs, it was just really trying to find myself, as a yoga teacher. I realized that all the work that I had been doing in education was with a lot of underserved, underrepresented youth, a lot that came from justice impacted backgrounds, either
Mm.
they directly themselves, like in juvenile detention centers, or they had one or both parents incarcerated, and they were just, struggling academically, socially, emotionally. And I was like, these are the kids that really need yoga the most.
Yeah.
This
Yeah, for
population
sure.
of so I really like around the time, surely coming out of the pandemic, when I earned my 200-hour and my 95-hour, I just literally prayed about it. I had a conversation with Jesus, and I said, you know what? Teaching in this yoga ministry is not doing it, but I still want to just carry this message and be this, servant of the Lord through yoga. How am I going to do this? And by golly, the message came through. And
He's good
around,
like that.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I was also running a ladies' Bible study group at the time at the church as well. And I met
Oh,
this
I
woman.
remember that.
Yeah, Women on the Move.
I
Women on the Move.
remember that one because so if you aren't familiar, for those who are watching or listening, um, the way that Dr. Donna and I met is I publish Christian Yoga Magazine, who sponsors this podcast, and I don't think you've ever missed a issue. You have written for every single issue we've ever published, which we are so grateful for. Um, just speaking to that overachiever. But I do remember that you were doing that because I'm like, how is she doing all this? And then we had some free downloads or something that you were going to share with your Bible study. I'm like, how? What?
Yes.
Do you sleep?
No, no, I really don't. Yeah. Yes, I remember. It all goes back to the very first issue, one of the first issues with the Beatitudes.
Yes.
Because, yes, I paid it forward, brought that into my women's group. So we were doing Bible study, and also I was integrating yoga with the Bible study group as well. So at one point in time, this one woman who joins the Bible study group, we started talking about what do we do in our regular daily lives, our career and everything. She worked for the juvenile correction system. So she
Okay.
tells me, she says, we tried having yoga for a while, and then the teacher just up and moved to California, and the kids just like they got a taste of it and they really enjoyed it, and now we've been trying to start it again. But the only thing is, Donna, we're looking for someone who, number one, has to be willing to volunteer. Number two, certified in yoga. And number three, willing, and not only willing, but interested and eager in teaching yoga to this population. And I'm like, oh, can I get an amen? I'm like, yes, yes.
Right? Where most people would have been like, not for me, right? Like,
Absolutely.
there was a
So
lot
now
lot going
I
on
feel
there.
3 years, a little over 3 years now, this past summer, 3 years teaching at the Juvenile Detention Center yoga, So, I mean, and that was what I wanted. I was like, you know what, Jesus, bring me to the populations that need it and want it the most. So, as a result now, I mean, that really is the whole like area of the yoga programming that I do with my organization. As a result of funding, seed funding, I was able to start the program for Yoga for Empowered Women, which is all for women that are returning citizens. They are from incarceration, and it's really intended for them to just reclaim their empowerment, their voice, to improve their, to increase their self-advocacy, their self-confidence, wellness, not only physical wellness, but that social, emotional wellness, everything, the whole package. And it's been absolutely great. It's just, I'm on the path now that I've always wanted to be with yoga.
That's amazing. What an awesome testimony. And I'm glad that you, and this goes back to the magazine too. One of the things that we're trying to do is just educate people about Christian yoga, because I started yoga in 2004. I took a class with a friend that I was going to college, and she was like, hey, come to yoga. I didn't know at the time I had endometriosis, which that's a bummer, right?
Right.
But I had always had issues. I had a softball-sized cyst on my right ovary when I was 14 years old. So I've always just kind of had, and I didn't know anything about like root chakras or any, all these things that like play into that.
Right.
Because you're just how we indoctrinate people right into the modern medicine.
Yeah.
And it's here, go to a doctor, find a specialist, let's have surgery.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget, I went and I took that class, and I was just like, well, I mean, when I was confused because I didn't know Sanskrit was a thing, and I'm like, what is happening? But I
Right.
was like, I need this in my life. And as someone who has lifelong depression, it's not situational, it's biological. I don't make enough serotonin.
Right.
I remember feeling amazing. Like I was sore, but it felt amazing. And I remember going home, and I was like so excited to share it with my parents. And my mom is like the very outgoing, crazy Italian, and my dad is like he was so quiet and reserved, but he was the head deacon in the church, and he preached often and all that. It was a very small Baptist church that I was raised in. And I go, Mom, I went to this yoga class, and before I could finish my sentence, she just throws her hands in the air because she's crazy Italian American. Like,
Yeah.
you can't go to
I have
yoga.
Italian also. My mom.
Okay, so you get it, right? She goes, you can't go to yoga. They worship Buddha. And I'm like, what? I'm going, no, they don't. Like, what? And then
Right.
she, whenever she was like done with me, she'd be, Wayne, which is my dad's name, Wayne. And my dad's eyes bugged out of his head. And he comes in, but his eyes are like saucers because he kind of heard something going on. And he
Right.
goes, she went to a yoga class. They worship Buddha. Tell her they worship Buddha. And my dad, who's just so quiet and he's just non-confrontational, like he's just the complete opposite of Mom. He walked out the front door, kept going. He didn't come back for like an hour because he was not getting in the middle of that. And I'm like, but Mom, where did you hear that? And so I was aware that there was, there is a spiritual element to it, but I had no idea about Christian yoga. And I just remember feeling once in that yoga class with that very first teacher right at the beginning, I just was like, there is something about being here doing this that's so right. Like, I need this to be part of my life. But then I got certified from 2007 to 2008. I got my 200 hour. I had no idea Christian yoga was a thing till 10 years later in 2018. I found Yoga Faith and Michelle Thielen, for
Right.
those who know Michelle.
Yeah.
And I believe it was just an ad, like I was scrolling probably through Facebook, and I was just like, wait, what? Like, that's a thing?
Yeah.
And it even, my mom still, she was in her 60s at the time, she just turned 70, she was still like, I don't know. She was very skeptical. And there's all these ideals that people have about yoga and what it is and what it isn't. And part of the
Absolutely.
magazine is to like get it out there and like tell people, hey, you can do this. You can worship God and grow closer and do yoga. And it's
Yes.
spiritually, it's mentally. I'm so glad though that you like right off the bat had that. And so does the prison allow you to like, are you allowed to pray with the juveniles? Are you allowed to bring that into it, or is it kind of like a silent?
Yeah, it is. I'm able to bring the Christian aspect into it when I'm doing it on my own. So,
Right.
I mean, any of my own programs, like, if we choose to with, yoga for empowered women or anything like that. But when I'm in the facilities, oh, there are so many. The list of all the things that are not allowed are way longer than anything that is permitted.
Jeez.
But here is where I see the Christianity and the Christian focus is that, I am just beyond teaching yoga. I see myself as that role model for
Yeah,
those
for
students,
sure.
for that youth, those youth or the adults. And I'll give you an example. I mean, this is like how we just kind of mirror ourselves and just continue to try to live our lives as Jesus has and as Jesus has taught us. Is the one day when I walked in to teach, they had some staff changes, which is very, very common in the whole
Yeah.
justice system and
Right.
correction system and everything like that. Plus, they did some rearranging of all their storage and everything, and they could not find the yoga mats.
Oh
And
no.
here I am, and this is the other thing too, which I'll get into, which is interesting, is that the whole dynamics of like where you teach and like how you set up and everything is so different. It is really meeting people where they are. And so here I am in the gym, which I teach in a gym with the bright lights. You can never like turn down the lights and have it be calm and everything because you have
Yeah.
to be able to see and safety and security and all this stuff. And they couldn't find the mats. They couldn't find the mats, and they're like, "Okay, well, you guys are all just gonna have to do without mats and just do yoga on the gym floor." Well, of course, I had my mat. I always bring my mat in and everything, and I was like, I had my mat rolled out as usual, waiting, blah blah blah. And with that, I was like, "Nope, I'm rolling mine up," and I rolled mine up, and I was like, "No, if the youth themselves, they
Yeah.
are not going to use the mats, then we're all going to be the same, and I'm not going to be." Something above that or different or this and that, and everybody was just like, wow, that is just but I'm like, that's just kind of, I mean, how I see it. That's my compassion and my
Yeah.
empathy, so yeah. And it's really interesting because like I said, you have to really be willing to adjust everything that you do teaching wise. I mean, and that's why there have been a lot of turnover where they were not finding kind of quote unquote the right yoga teacher to come in and work with that population because you know and I don't mean this in any negative sense, but there'd be a lot of people that would come in and expecting to teach like you would in a studio,
Oh
and
no.
I mean, you can't bring in any props, nothing, it's the yoga mat and that's it. It's in
No
a gym.
blocks even.
Oh, no blocks, no straps, nothing. And it's a gym and just the blaring lights. And you have to get used to the fact that, I mean, in a moment's notice, I mean, you could have the group, a unit come in late, leave early, go into a lockdown kind of thing. I mean, you don't know how long, you can't ask any questions, whatever. There's very limited kind of interaction. You don't really, all of those things. But one of the really big pivotal aspects was when I first started off, I was just teaching the girls unit. And
Okay.
then they asked me, they said, hey, I mean, they all got wind of this. Oh, this is really good. I mean, the kids, I mean, it's really, they were seeing a noticeable difference for the better. And so they asked me, they said, well, how would you feel about teaching the boys unit? And I'm like, awesome. Like, bring it on. I'm like, this is great.
Most
And
women would have been like,
athletic practice, this is that.
Yeah.
Well, up until this time, I had been, when I was teaching the girls unit, it was pretty traditional where we were laying out the yoga mats facing me, kind of, scattered and, staggered and everything like that. Well, the first time the boys unit came in, and again, boys, girls, very different.
Sure.
Wow. There was a power struggle. I mean, with which boys were in front, who was in back, all of this. And I'm like, the dynamics was just like, you could just feel it in the room. So after I got out, I started thinking about it and I'm like, just reflective thinking. And I was like, okay, wait a second, what is going to bring us unity? Okay, break down those kind of barriers and that power struggle. What if we set up the mats in a circular formation?
That is my favorite, favorite, favorite. And I was like, oh, I
Absolutely.
wonder, because
Oh,
you
yeah,
want that way it's inclusive, and
it is.
that's hard for me. It was the first teacher that I had, the one where I wasn't worshiping Buddha.
Right.
um, she did that. It was
Yeah,
in a circle, and so for me, I was like, I can't hide anywhere.
right.
It's
Yes,
hard for an introvert. However, as a teacher, like, I don't know, there's something about having everybody included
it
that's
is.
just, I don't know, it's so important. It's just, I mean, and that's just, look at Jesus. You can just, I mean, he truly included everyone.
Yeah,
The woman at the well was the first person to know who he was, and yet she was shunned in her community.
right.
And he talked to lepers, and you know, the kids, when even the disciples were like, oh, you know, you got to go away or whatever, he said, no, bring them to me.
Right.
And I
Yeah,
mean, that's
bring the
just,
good children to
I
me.
mean, that's one of those things where it's like, you're not standing here saying this is Christianity and this is what you got to do and this is how you're a Christian. You're just doing it and you're living it, and it makes people go, because yeah, you're including everybody in such a hard population like that. What happened when you went to the circle method? Did they kind of,
Oh,
did it change everything?
it did. It did. And you know what was interesting, was funny, was when I was telling one of my yoga friends in the community here out in Phoenix about the circular formation, the arrangement of the mats, she asked me, she said, oh, so are you in the middle of the circle so you can see? And I said, no, 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 I am part of the circle. I'm like
Yeah.
right here in every, yes. And I, and in looking back on it, especially the first couple of times, it was challenging for me in terms of the cueing, because it's
Yeah.
like, the ones across from you are mirroring, but then the ones on the side and everything. But then I got the hang of it as far as like how I would cue it. And I was like, hey, so what if it's difficult for me? I am the servant to them. I'm like, they are the recipients of the benefit. So I'm like, I have to work harder. That's okay, you know?
Yeah.
But it diffused the power like you couldn't believe. It
That's
was
awesome.
unbelievable. And just the sense of like the energy. I mean, like when we be in a warrior three and we're all, just our hands and our fingers are reaching towards the
Hmm.
center of the circle. It increased, it just made a big difference on their focus and their balance, because we're all setting our gaze in the center of the circle. So I mean, it was incredible. It was really, really, really neat to see. Yeah.
That's, I mean, yes, you are the person for the job, but it's just little things like that. I mean, I it's just, you just amaze me as a person. I wish everybody could see this side of you. I wish everybody could practice with you, but those kids are really blessed. What happens? So in that setting, I don't know like how juveniles set up. So I assume that it's just like adult prison where they're coming and going at their own timing. So you're not like teaching a class and they all move on or they all leave. It's
No.
all in and out, constant. You're getting new kids, you're missing kids.
Absolutely. And the staff will change up, the units, because they want to their
Right.
goal is to try to have every one of the units experience yoga, but I'm only coming out like every other Sunday, and I only have X number of hours that I can be there, 2-3 hours. So it is really challenging. So I mean, I've had some youth that have been with me for several months, because again, they can be there, awaiting adjudication or anything, and then
Hmm.
some that, unfortunately will return, youth that, I had for a while and then they were gone because they were released and then they could come back into the system,
Oh,
so,
yeah,
but,
recidivism is just, oh, that's got to be painful for you as a teacher to,
oh,
like, you're
absolutely.
happy, like, hey, I'm glad to see you, but also like I wanted to see you at Starbucks, not here.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So a lot of what I tell them, during the practice, like when we go through breath work and everything, is I reiterate to them that this is part of your toolbox. If you can remember to do these, types of breathing techniques and these poses and everything, and during times that you're facing a stressful, challenging situation, whether that be maybe tomorrow while you're still here, or when you're out, or anything that I just want to add to your toolbox. And I think that that's something that helps so much of that, that instability of like never knowing, who's going to be in the room, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So let's talk about using yoga to reduce stress and anxiety as you're helping these underserved, marginalized groups of people. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think a combination is between really understanding and applying a lot of the trauma informed practices, along with breath work, and grounding, mindfulness, affirmations. I think it's a real combination between those three. So when we take a look at like trauma informed practice, really recognizing that, take for example those spatial arrangements and the arrangements of the mats. I mean, there are a lot of youth as well as adults who are very, very sensitive about having their back
Oh
to
yeah.
a door, right? Because they're so scared of who's going to come through that door, and they don't have the ability to defend themselves and everything like that. So being very aware of like who's placed where in the room on the mat, where they're gonna a certain youth or adult being able to face the door, or this and that. Having a real keen awareness of poses, like for example, with a final resting pose of shavasana. Honestly, being on one's back is really can be very, very vulnerable. I mean, that open heart aspect, and this is that, and you never know, who has suffered any form of abuse or anything like
Right.
that. So
Right.
I just tell them, I'm like, however you are most comfortable. You might be lying on your side, on your stomach. I mean, if it's all right with the staff, I mean, and everything, to move your mat along the wall so you feel that support of the wall back, against your back.
Oh, that's a
Then
good
it's
one.
completely fine that, if you want to close your eyes, if you don't, I really describe what that soft gaze is that your eyelids are really heavy. I use a lot of descriptive, passages like, analogies that you're going to sleep at night and your eyelids are getting heavy, but they're not closed yet. So softening that gaze. So recognizing that, again, a lot of people, youth, adults, are not comfortable with closing their eyes. Again, that it's vulnerability and everything like that. So really keeping that awareness in mind. Also, connecting the senses, that is very, very grounding, so that when anybody is facing anxiety or just needs to stay calm, the more you can combine the senses. Like a lot of times I'll do the finger tracing for breath,
Mm.
that when you're doing an inhale, you're tracing up on the finger, and then exhale. So now you're connecting the breath with something tactile, kinesthetic, something visual that you're watching. That is super grounding. It's super, it's connecting and everything like that. So I do a lot of those. I incorporate a lot of those practices. And then the affirmations, like I'll take them through a guided meditation, and it's something that is really aligned to who they are as youth. That even though they're not maybe technically like going to a traditional school like we
Mhm.
would, but they're aware of a backpack, and that your backpack carries your books and everything.
Right.
And I describe the backpack as having, heavy rocks in it. And that can be, really significant. That can really be symbolic of everything that's weighing on your mind, and that you are in control of this. You're going to take a break along this, like, road or this path that you're walking, and
Mhm.
unzip that backpack and take that rock out and put it on the ground. Zip it up, put it back, and now it's lighter and you're going to continue on. So I take them through a lot of those things too.
Do you, and so one of the big things in all the trauma teacher training that I've been through, um, because I worked prior to the magazine a lot with the military first responder
Hmm.
demographic. So, um, and that's another one that they have to be aware of where they are.
Yeah, a lot of
And
PTSD.
someone explained to me that, especially with like Marines, they need to know where everyone is, what they're doing, what they did, where they're going, and what they're about to do. And I was like, oh, so I mean that makes sense when you're stuck in that fight or flight mode, that
Yeah.
trauma mode that you can't get stuck out of. Yeah, you need to know what's going on. And one of the things that always stuck out to me was not touching and not
Right.
adjusting. And
No.
so,
I'm totally hands off. Even with my adult population, I make that
yeah.
really clear. Yes.
Are you even
Mhm.
allowed to with the
No.
juveniles? It's probably not even allowed to.
Nope. Nope. And there's
Okay.
distance between us, distance on the mats. Nope. Mm-mm. No. They don't even know my first name. They know me as the yoga teacher. There's so much
Oh,
security
for
with
your
all of that.
safety.
Yep.
Yeah, for your
Hmm.
safety,
Absolutely.
which is, so important. Um, and and so, do you use Sanskrit in that demographic? You
No.
probably use more common.
Yep.
This is
They,
butterfly. This is warrior. This is
right. Yep. Easy seated, cross legged.
yeah.
Yes.
You
Hmm.
just see a
Relaxing
bunch
pose.
of youth having this crazy woman come in and start talking about Uttanasa and everything like that.
Yep.
Because that was
No.
something that
No.
stuck out to me my first class. I'm like, what is happening here? Who
Right.
is this person? Like, who are you talking to?
Yes. Yeah.
um,
I mean, every once in a while with my adults, I will sprinkle some in, but
mhm,
no. Again, I keep it as just all English, language, just
right.
regular kind of quote unquote layman's language and everything, because that's something else with the sensitivities as far as your self confidence and your self efficacy, is that you hear this word and you're like, am I supposed to understand it? Am I supposed to know? I don't know what this means. And
Right.
it raises the anxiety level. Like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Everybody in yoga knows what shavasana means? No. It's your comfortable resting pose.
I
Bingo.
actually call it angel pose
Oh, wow.
because
That's nice.
I never wanted to use corpse pose,
No, I
especially when you're
completely with you.
dealing with military and first responders, because
Right.
the last thing you want is to trigger a flashback or something like that. And
Right.
so I just call it angel pose because
Oh,
you're
yeah.
just laying gently like you would an angel in the snow. You can put your arms
Mhm.
out, up, down, and just, I know a lot of trauma training, they teach us that it's all about options and giving them options.
Yes.
And I'm sure with the younger kids, that's super
Oh,
important
yeah.
and they need
Yeah.
that.
I always tell them that is this time is your practice. You can, choose not to do a pose. You can, vary that. You can, at any point in time, you can rest. It is all about honoring your body, your mind, your breath in this moment, during this time, during this hour. Yes. I even tell them, I'm like, even though we're symmetrical beings, I make them kind of laugh and everything. Every once in a while, we have, little points of humor and stuff.
Hmm.
That even though we're symmetrical beings, right and left side and everything, I'm like, just understanding that we're still not equal on both sides. What we're able to do, like in tree pose and lifting your foot up along your leg. And I said, hey, the only time you have to adhere to that rule is in yoga. I mean, is in algebra, not in yoga. What you do on one side, you have to do on the other side.
Right.
That's memorize in algebra. Otherwise, you're not going to get the right answer. I'm like, but not in yoga.
Some
you
people
know?
are surprised, I have found in teaching, when you tell, my thing I've always said is we're not as symmetrical as we think we are.
Right.
So I'll be, and I'll try to explain that it's okay if you're in tree pose to then change sides and now you're like wobbly or you're waving, which is fine because trees move.
Exactly.
Um, but it could be frustrating for someone that doesn't understand that. I mean, I definitely, one of my hips is definitely higher than the other, and I know
Yeah.
it so I can adjust, right? But at first I was like, well, that's wonky. And so I think a lot of people who don't have not gone through teacher training don't realize like
Yeah.
how much anatomy we actually know and
Oh,
go
yeah.
through to be able to like help people compensate for that. But
Yeah.
it's so totally normal. Like I could get wide open in pigeon on one side, but
Yeah.
when I went to my left side, I like couldn't do it. And at first, it was frustrating. I'm like, what's wrong with my hip? And that's how I figured out, well, there's something's off here. Something's, and I was able to adjust it with a half block of all things. And it's,
Right.
which is something that, some people are just like so afraid of props. They think that they're
Oh.
they're evil. They don't want to use them. They're too. I mean, some of the guys, especially in the military, first responder demographic, are way too cool for props. What do you do when you have these kids and all you have is a mat? I mean, you can only fold a mat so many times to help
Right.
compensate for that. Are you just doing it through cueing? How are you getting them to work through that?
Yeah, there are, well, luckily, just luckily because they are youth. I mean, anywhere between, 14, 13 through 17. They're usually, more flexible and
Right.
everything like that. So that is a plus. But as I go through any particular sequence, if I see that, pretty much the majority around the room that it's not really working, that I really wish I had a block for this or anything like that, I will shift gears and I will. I mean, so there's some things that again, just like the arrangement, the mat formation, the lights, really bright in the room. It doesn't look quite the same way as a traditional yoga class in a studio where you have accessibility to all those things. So yeah, I'll definitely change that up from time to time.
And you think that there's still, obviously there's value in everything, right? Any type of yoga practice. But do you think that they're getting, if they were to go to a secular studio, do you think that they would get more out of their yoga practice with the lights going down and being able to use props and stuff? Or just they're so young, they adapt so well.
Yeah, yeah, they really do. I think it would be good for. I really, my hope is that especially when they come out, that they have the opportunity to experience yoga in those settings, just so that they obtain a better idea of like what it what it can really do for your emotions, your breath, that just by kind of as we know, environment, ambiance is
Yeah.
so important. I mean, we I mean, go to a restaurant that's really loud and bustling and this and that. How relaxed are we, as opposed to versus going to a restaurant that doesn't have all of the TVs and the monitors and recessed lighting and everything. And what does that do for that dining experience? It's the same thing, with yoga, that if we have those,
Yeah.
extra kind of quote unquote amenities, they will help us holistically. Yeah.
You think that's part of the barrier though when they're trying to find the right yoga teacher?
Oh,
So
you mean
like,
that?
so they trying to find someone that can adapt to
Oh, yeah.
this
That,
demographic. I
yeah,
Not every teacher is going to be cut out for figuring out, hey, we need to go in a circle, or
right.
we need to not use Sanskrit terms, we need to be super clear English instructions. um, do you think it's a barrier there that prevents them from getting yoga teachers in, and what can we do about that?
Yes, I think so. I think that is definitely a huge barrier, and I think honestly, it goes back to our teacher training. I see so many similarities with our yoga teacher training, along with just teacher training in general, because some of my regular quote unquote daytime work is I serve as an adjunct professor with Grand Canyon University, a
Yeah.
Christian based university, out here in Phoenix. And the coursework that I teach is for undergrads, elementary education majors, classroom management. And I see a lot of the similarities that we're
Mm.
somehow preparing and training our kind of cadre of teachers, whether yoga teachers, elementary, to go into a particular setting. And
Yeah.
I think in terms of yoga, we're preparing individuals to go into these settings of a studio, of a
Mhm.
gym, and never having this discussion of, wow, there's like a whole world out there
It
of teaching
really
yoga.
is.
I mean, just think about the modifications one has to make, even if you have props available to you, in teaching at a park, outside, in a public park. I mean, I'll give you this example. This was hilarious, Tina. And this was when I was taking a class from one of
Okay.
my former teachers in the park. And you can imagine this early morning class, beautiful park out here in Phoenix during the winter, which is the time to have yoga in the park out here in Phoenix.
I didn't think
Beautiful
you had
weather.
winter.
Oh yeah, it was so calm, everything like that. And we're ready now to enter into our final resting, our shavasana. Everything has been amazing. And a car pulls into the lot, which we were pretty close in this grassy area, with the music like boom, 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 boom.
The ground is shaking.
Hilarious. It was hilarious. And then also at the time, in this car, like boom, boom, boom with the music, they also had their pet dog. And they're yelling, come on, Frank, out of their dog got the, frisbee and everything, and they're ready to throw the dog is like, woof, 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 going past. And all of us are like trying. And with that, we just started cracking up. I mean, it was life, just life. And
Yeah.
that is something that I try to get across in my classes with my youth, with my adults, is that this is just life. I mean, we can have all the plans in the world when we
Yeah.
wake up in the morning, but you know what? It's God's plan. And we
Right.
have to adapt, and we have to roll with those waves and everything. It's not going to be picture perfect. So sometimes it's kind of like doing a disservice in our training programs, that like we're going to have this perfect serene setting of like the room with the wood floor, and it's totally quiet, and the little aromatherapy and the candles, and this is, no, we have to be able to filter these things out for ourselves. We have to be able to find peace for ourselves amidst the boom, boom, boom music and the this and all the distractions. That's when it's really the challenge as
Yeah.
to how are we finding this. So
Yeah.
I think that's a big portion what I've seen.
So, one more question. Then we are gonna start wrapping this up. We're already at 43 minutes, but I could talk to you for hours. And this topic is just so fascinating. Someone that wants to work in that area, that demographic, what's your best advice? And what is your best advice as a Christian in such a it feels to me like it's probably a chaotic environment generally,
Right.
juvenile detention.
Yeah.
What is your best advice, and then what is your best advice coming from a Christian standpoint for people that want to go into this and want to serve these underserved populations?
Right. Yes. I would say, just first and foremost, look inside of your heart. Look inside your heart, and have an open heart. I mean, I really I go back to some scripture as far as letting go of judgment. That is huge. I mean, you have to almost really examine yourself. I mean, and take a look at what are your own biases? What are your own judgments and everything? And start breaking that down for yourself. And to just recognize that from the Christian standpoint, you know what? To some capacity, some level, everything. Because I definitely, in my whole life, I have battled a lot of depression. I've battled a lot of anxiety throughout my life. I have battled a lot of, eating disorder in the way of finding my path with my relationship with food and healthy body image. That's
Mhm.
been some big factors and everything in my life. So recognizing that whole idea of that goes back to the Bible and our scripture that, you know let let the first person without sin cast that first stone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's it. I mean, every one of us, is broken. So,
Sure.
so that we're not coming into this kind of environment of, well, I'm the yoga teacher and I know best, or this and that. No, I'm here to share my practice. We're, we may not be eating, but we're breaking bread together by being in this circle, in this unity. And I don't have all the answers. I'm broken myself, but I have something. This is a gift that I have, that I've developed, that I'm going to share this with you. So I think that's been huge for me.
Okay.
And just recognizing my own struggles in the flesh, my own struggles, like I said, just where am I in my Christian faith and everything like that. So that has really helped me. And then I would say, that you really literally just have to, just you have to love this population. You have to love the youth. You have to love people, and just be willing to meet them where they are. I mean, I've had certain instances where, you know, youth just stopped and laid on their mat. They kind of gave up. They were frustrated, this, and that. I, reiterate these things of just, hey, sometimes it is just that type of day. But just, as long as they kind of stay in the room, and just absorb. I mean, my words will, kind of soak
Yeah.
in like a sponge. And then, like I said, the idea of just adaptability, being willing, to be flexible. And I don't mean,
No pun
physically
intended.
right, right. Yeah. And again, I mean, giving grace to yourself, and accepting,
Grace is a
that,
huge thing that so many of us struggle with. I'll give
oh,
grace to anyone but myself.
oh yeah, absolutely. That, I mean, I'm the first person to say, "Oh, I could have cued that better," and this, and that, or I mean, if you're sitting there in this kind of lockdown situation for 20 minutes, and we really didn't get to the practice all that much, but that's okay. You know what? I was with them. I was in the room with them. I sat there with my head down, just as they're supposed to be during this, this time, the same as they were, I mean, and I was just that role model that I never became irritated. I complied with all the directions and this and that. That's in that moment, that's what it was supposed to be. That's the yoga that I was teaching. So I think if you just keep a lot of those things in mind, that will really help. And then the last thing is just communication is really, really key. I
Mhm.
mean, in that environment with the staff and everything. I mean, one of the first conversations that I had with the staff was, okay, how do you want me to approach music? I mean, I typically use music off my phone. Am I allowed to bring this in? This is that. Being able to let go of all of those kind of traditional kind of ideas. I mean, I use very, very basic kind of like for just the ambiance of music. No lyrics, this, and that. The way
Right,
I
right.
dress, very, very basic, colors. Because again, colors can, trigger like associations with gangs and everything. So it's like
Right.
black leggings, gray kind of black top, everything. So just letting go of what you always think is kind of the norm or what yoga should be or look like. Yeah.
Right. I don't think I even would have thought about the colors.
Yeah.
That could
Oh
be a
yeah.
huge thing now that you mention it. All right, so we're going to pivot. You are listening to the Center with Jesus podcast. I am your host, Tina. We're talking with Dr. Donna J, who is just a godsend to the juvenile detention population in Phoenix, Arizona. I mean, they must be so grateful for you. I'm grateful that you're in there doing that work. I don't know that I could do that. Yeah. So, anyway, if you're watching us in real time, Dr. Donna, you are going to be a keynote at the Christian Yoga Magazine Yoga Expo 2024.
That's
And
fun.
1 month from today,
I know. Oh my
right?
gosh.
So, October 11th and 12th, we are in just outside of Columbus, Ohio. We started in Columbus, and then before we even released information to the public, we had to switch churches because we outgrew the first space, which was a blessing and also nobody's going to know where Etna, Ohio is, but we all know Columbus. So you are a keynote speaker. What are you talking about? Tell us briefly what you're talking about.
Yes, I am giving a session on yoga in the schools, which, when you talk about breaking down those misconceptions, we have so fortunately, so blessed that we have come so far with now being able to offer yoga in our public schools. It's amazing, amazing. And then also family yoga, intergenerational, which is so important because so much of trauma, when we talk about justice impacted and trauma, is intergenerational. It is passed down from generation to generation. So if we can start rebuilding and healing those relationships by growing together in this kind of environment in terms of yoga and Christian yoga, wow, it is super, super great. So those are the two areas that I'm going to be talking about.
Exciting. I know you're excited.
Yeah.
So if you are in the Columbus area this October 11th and 12th of 2024, come join us. We're actually in Etna, right outside of Columbus, and it's going to be an amazing time. We have some amazing speakers. We've got classes, workshops. There's a vendor village. There's all the things. Brought to you by Christian Yoga Magazine, which is a sponsor of this channel. I appreciate you spending time with us today. We have other things to talk about, so you're gonna have to be a repeat guest for sure. I feel like we touched on juvenile yoga, but the whole intergenerational thing and just working with youth out in public and bringing it into schools, and what does that look like? So if somebody wants to connect with you outside of the podcast, where do they find you?
Yes, absolutely. I would say first and foremost is directly to my website, which is www.blessingsbalancebreathyoga.com. So going to my website will take you immediately everywhere else to my social media. You can find my social media on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn company page as well.
Okay. Tough questions. Favorite color?
Green.
Favorite ice cream?
Color of nature and everything. Pistachio.
Really?
Yes.
I love
Maybe
pistachio.
because it's green.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Well, it's Italian. That's like such an Italian thing.
Exactly, because I'm half Italian, half Polish.
Which
So,
my kids are so picky about so many things, but if you offer them pistachio anything, they are on it. They're really funny about that.
I love pistachios. I've actually put it in my coffee. Oh, really? Pistachio flavor.
Oh, I'll do biscotti in the coffee.
Oh,
Pistachio.
that's so good too. Oh,
Yeah.
especially wintertime. Yes.
So we're recording this right before dinner, y'all. You're like, why did they have that tangent on the end about food? Okay, last question. Was there anything I should have asked you but didn't?
I can't imagine. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
We covered a lot. Yeah.
All right. Well, we did. This was a long episode. Thank you, Dr. Donna J. Again, I apologize. I promise y'all, we are friends in real life. I just can't pronounce her last name. Jagielski.
Yes, Jagielski. Yep, you got it.
We were making that so much harder than we had to at the main office here. So thank you for being our guest today. Reach out to her if you would like to connect with her, find out more. You're always willing to help everyone. You just have a very wide open heart chakra. And we will have you back for sure. Thanks for listening. This has been the Center with Jesus podcast, brought to you by Christian Yoga Magazine. I'm your host, Tina Lancy. Thank you to our special guest, Dr. Donna Jagielski. We'll see y'all next time. Bye now.